Hello everyone, I'm Laura Barat from laurabaratastrologer.com, and today I'm discussing the Saptamsa or the D7 Varga. Okay, this is a derivative of the 7th house, and it is the 5th Varga in the scheme of the Shodasha Vargas mentioned by Kashira. Kashira mentions 16 Vargas that we should pay attention to and that are most important. So he goes from the Chaturtamsha and he skips Vargas for the 5th and 6th house and he goes straight to the 7th. Okay. Normally, most astrologers attribute children to this Varga, and it does represent children, but it does not represent the physical child. Okay. You see the physical child from the 5th house cusp in the Rashi chart or the birth chart, and you see the different aspects of the child's life from the 5th cusp in other Vargas. The child's health from the 5th cusp in the D30 or the Trimshamsha, the power and influence the child will have at the 5th house cusp in the D10 or the Dashamsha. Okay. The child's spouse from the 5th house cusp in the D9 or the Navamsha. That's how you read different people. So what does this actually represent, the Saptamsa? It represents being able to create with another person. That's what it means. Two people come together and they have sex, they make a child. That's what this Varga represents. It's the creative Varga, but it is creative with someone else or other people. Okay. So this Varga represents the act of making children or conception. It also represents creating things in the world that are embraced by others or are embraced by the public. Okay. And so it also represents the fact that when you get together with someone and you create a child, you need someone else, you need the embrace of someone else to create the child. So it has to do with our ability to attract other people into our lives or be attracted to others, to embrace them, to create a child. Okay. So it is the most important chart for looking at happiness and well-being and fulfillment in relationships. It is not the Navamsha. The Navamsha is something different. The Navamsha has to do with marriage in the dharmic path. Okay. Not being attracted to people, who you attract, how happy you are with your spouse, the relationship you and your spouse have. I will talk about that when I cover the Navamsha. Okay. It is a 9th house Varga, and the 9th house has to do with legal marriage, our dharmic path, whether that is being a married person, being an ascetic person, being a single person. It has to do with those things. The 7th house or the 7th Varga, the D7, the Saptamsha specifically has to do with our relationship life. Okay. And how well we are embraced by the other. All right. It also has to do with if we want to create, if we're a very creative person, if we're a musician, an artist, a writer, an architect, an engineer, you name it, whatever we're creating, how well people receive that and respect it and want it in their lives, that is seen by this Varga. So if you want to be in a profession where you need to garner a certain amount of fame, you're going to look at this Varga. Okay. And if you want people to buy your art, let's say you're an artist, this is the Varga you want to look at. Okay. So very important. I'm also going to talk about the deities of this Varga, and there are 7 deities, and they all have a way or a method, a theme of their creation. And deity is really not the right word. There's deities for every Varga. Okay. So I'm just using that word, but it's more, these are liquids. Okay. They're juices. They're liquids. And you know how you say, oh, I'm getting the creative juices flowing. Well, this directly has to do with that, okay? Because they are liquids. And I'll get into that in a minute. But I just wanted to mention, this is very much a chart you look at for relationship issues. The most important planets in this Varga are Jupiter. Jupiter is the 5th planet. Jupiter rules the Svadhisthana chakra, okay, or the sex chakra, the sacral chakra. And that is the chakra where we create, okay, where we conceive. If you're a woman, you conceive. That is ruling that area of the body, okay, and it's a sexual chakra. It creates children. And it's ruled by Jupiter, not Venus, okay? Venus is also important in this Varga, but it's not as important as Jupiter. Jupiter is going to show how well you create children or any of your creations, how prolific you are in those creations, how unique you are in those creations. Jupiter is creative intelligence, and how long they last. Now, this is also a chart or a Varga of our legacy, okay? The 7th house rules death, the death of the physical body. It's where the sun sets. It's the end of the day, okay? It's the end of our life. It's the path we walk. We're born on this earth. The ascendant is the sign on the eastern horizon that develops our personality to a certain extent, and also our appearance. We walk the path of life. As we walk the path of life, we go to the opposite sign, and that's where we have our end of life. Children represent our legacy after we die. Okay? Our DNA carries on into the world, and our legacy continues. So it's very much a legacy. You know, you have famous people who have legacies of whatever it is, art, music, science, inventions, and their legacy carries on. That is ruled by this Varga, okay? Because it's what we create that people remember us by. And, or it's children, right? For most people, it's children. You can also have people who have a lot of children, but they never get married. Children are not tied to marriage. So that's why this is a specific chart for creation and marriage and the people that we want to be with, we're attracted to, and who are attracted to us. And then we have marriage, which is something different. That's more of a kind of dharmic path, like I said before. Now, so that's Jupiter, okay? Now, most people don't think of Jupiter as, you know, a sexual planet, but it is. It very much is. It rules the sex chakra, and you have something called Hamsa Yoga. Hamsa Yoga is when you have Jupiter in his own sign or exalted in an angle, okay? And that causes Hamsa Yoga, meaning the incarnation of Jupiter. People who usually have Hamsa Yoga are usually are very attractive. They attract a lot of people. They're very creative people. They usually have a lot of people in their lives who want to be with them, or they want to be with a lot of people because they want to create. Okay. And that's it's got that reputation, Hamsa Yoga. So Jupiter is an extremely creative planet, and he's the main planet. Then you have Venus. Venus is our relationships and how we relate to other people, our ability to share ourselves, our ability to compromise. Relationships take a certain amount of compromise. They take a certain amount of sharing. Okay. So Venus is a secondary planet. Look to Venus to see how happy the person will be in their relationships. Okay. How well they are in expressing their affection, how well they are in sharing, or how good they are in sharing. Okay. The important house cusps of course, is the 7th cusp. That's the most important. All right. And then you have the 1st cusp. The 1st cusp, or the ascendant of this Varga, is also extremely important. The reason is, well, there's a numerological reason for it. Sorry about that. But, and it's because if you add up all the numbers in 7, you get 10, and then 1 plus 0 is 1. That's the numerology of it. But, it's also important because the ascendant is the body. And if you have an attractive body, if you have, a charismatic personality. Okay. So if you have an attractive body, an attractive appearance, you're going to attract more people into your life. Okay. You have more of options, I guess you could say. If you are charismatic and have a very charismatic personality, you're going to be more embraced by the public. Okay. Usually the public doesn't embrace people who have bland personalities. So that's also important. So keep that in mind. You can predict pregnancy and childbirth in this Varga through whatever method you use. You can use Vimshodari Dasha or one of the other Nakshatra Dashas. You can use Charanavamsha Dasha or one of the Rashi Dashas, mainly Charanavamsha Dasha. Okay. Or you can use transits based on the lords of, the 7th and the 1st in this Varga. Okay. And even the 5th cusp in this Varga. So this Varga really encompasses a lot, and you're also going to be able to see the people that you're attracted to, some of their personality characteristics and some of their physical characteristics by looking at or analyzing the 7th from the Atmakaraka. So you find your Atmakaraka. If your Atmakaraka is Saturn or the moon or whatever it is, you look at that Atmakaraka, the sign it occupies in the Saptamsa, and you look at the 7th sign from that and see the planet there. And that's going to tell you a lot about who you attract into your life. If there are no planets there, use Rashi aspects. Okay. And you can also see, in addition to that, to give it more nuance and details, you can look at the 7th cusp, the ruler of that 7th cusp. Any planets can join the 7th cusp or in the same sign. Okay. And you can see a lot, that'll tell you a lot as well about the people that you're attracted to and who are attracted to you. You can also time relationships from this Varga. So a great Varga, I mean, I use it all the time. People want to know about relationships first and foremost. So, it's a wonderful divisional chart to use in your practice. Okay. So those are the house cusps and the important planets. Now I want to talk about the deities. This is really fun. This is really interesting. You can give, a pretty good reading based on this chart alone. All right. So there's seven liquids. Okay. 7 essences in liquid form that rule over this chart or rule over certain sections of this chart. Okay. And it's actually, you divide, I'll put down in the description how you calculate this chart. Okay. And then to find the deities, or to get the deities, I should say. Let me just make sure I've got it here. All right. So this is how it works. Once you determine how to calculate it, you see each portion, it's basically the sign divided up into 7 portions. And, in odd signs, the Saptamsa deities, I'll just call them deities for now, they follow an order, okay? In the even signs, that order is reversed. And these liquids are endowed with great vitality, or the essence of vitality. And so I'm going to read these deities in the order of the odd signs. And so if you have planets in even signs, you can do it backwards. Okay. So you have the first deity. Now this is the first deity is Kashira. It's spelled Kshaara. And this deity is going to rule the first portion, or the first Saptamsa of a sign in odd signs, or it will rule the last portion or last Saptamsa in even signs or feminine signs. Okay. Now this deity is Kashira, and that means a corrosive liquid. All right. And it's the first portion of the sign, or the first Saptamsa, and the first has to do with you as a person. Okay. The whole idea of the Saptamsa is to create with others. You either create with another person, or you create with the public. Other people embrace your creation. So together you make it into something that lives on, right? Now, if it's in the first portion, it's a corrosive liquid, meaning it doesn't have an outlet. It doesn't have a place where it can fully express itself. Okay. And because it doesn't, it gets corrosive. It starts to eat away at the body and mind, or the emotional body. So planets or house cusps here will not stifle the creativity, because it's a very creative position, but it's not getting recognized as much as the person would like. Okay. It's like, a creative genius who puts their ideas out there and nobody really understands what they're talking about. There's a lot of people that have happened to. I think one is J.S. Bach. He didn't really get any recognition until after he passed on. What's his name? Vincent van Gogh, that's who I was thinking of, didn't get recognition either. And then after he passed on, he became huge. Okay. So it's people like that, people who have they're very creative and they create, but it's just not being embraced. Okay. This portion, or Kashira, the Kashira corrosive liquid, is ruled by the sun. That's the planetary deity. And the sun is a loner planet. The sun rules our higher self, our relationship to our soul, our relationship to our higher self. It is a very personal, individualistic planet. It's a lone planet. It shines really bright, but it's alone. Okay. That's why in the Indian system, they do not use the sun hardly at all for compatibility, for relationship compatibility. It's the moon they use. All right. And you can't embrace the sun. Obviously we'll never get close to the sun in our pods, in our spaceships, because we'll burn up. Right. So all the other planets, that's not the case. So, it can be the person gets frustrated a little bit in their attempt to create, or in their attempt to find a partner, all right, and be happy with that partner and want to create with that partner. This can indicate someone who really wants to be in a relationship, but just doesn't have the right tools for whatever reason, or the people they're attracted to have no interest in them, or people who are interested in them, they have no interest in, that kind of thing. That's how this certain portion happens and works. Okay. So the second deity, or the second liquid, is Kashira. It's spelled Kshiira. And this is milk. This is what it means. It's milk. Now, milk is, something that the infant needs in the first part of life. It's the only food it needs, okay? And it nourishes the infant, helps it grow. It's very nourishing, and it really sets a strong foundation for the child to grow into a healthy being, okay? So this is a really nice portion or Saptamsa or deity for a planet or house cusp to fall within, because it does tend to have the person be satisfied in their relationships, and they usually get into relationships that have a strong foundation, okay? They're not super hyped up and filled with all this creativity and wants to create everything. They're not like that. They're more slow, steady, building a strong foundation, creating something that will last and be healthy, okay? And they do that in their creations, and they do that in their relationships, all right? They're also very nourishing to their partners, or their partners are nourishing to them. It has an element of nourishment about it because it's ruled by, it is milk, okay? And it's ruled by the moon. The moon is the planet where we have comfort, where we feel comfortable, right? So, their creations are embraced by the public, and they last a long time. The third, okay, so that one I talked about, Kashira, that is the Saptamsa. That's the second portion for a masculine sign or fire and air signs. And then it's the second to last portion of the feminine signs or earth and water signs, okay? Then you have the third portion, the third liquid is Deity, D-A-D-H-I, Deity. Okay, this is a little more powerful. This is what yogurt, basically. It's coagulated milk, curds, or yogurt, right? Yogurt is actually a food that's full of vital energy and is a lot more powerful than milk. Okay, you can eat less of it and give you a lot of energy, right? But milk goes through an alchemical process, okay? Milk has to go through a certain process to become yogurt. And as it does so, it's able to transform into something that actually becomes more nourishing, all right? This essence, this yogurt Saptamsa, is actually ruled by Mars. This creativity is creative in a way to solve problems or solve something or fix something, or the person creates because there's a problem that needs to be solved, okay? Or they take something that's already been created and make it into something better. Okay, Mars is the planet that fixes things. He fixes things through logic and through extreme concentration. So that is how this Deity Saptamsa works. That's how these people create. Now, when they get into relationships, they might get into a relationship because they're healing, or some negative circumstance got them into a relationship and it works out. Like, for example, a man gets into a car accident. He's in the hospital. He falls in love with his nurse. His nurse falls in love with him. That they got into a relationship because of a problem, okay? Or they get into relationships where the person has a problem, and they transform them. They help them overcome it, and they help them get better. And the relationship is based on that, or vice versa, right? So that's how this certain Saptamsa works. They improve upon things, they fix things, they find a solution to a problem, and they're creative that way. Okay? Okay, so the fourth Saptamsa, or the fourth deity, the fourth essence, it rules the fourth portion in a sign of an odd sign and the fourth portion of an even sign. Okay? Now this is melted ghee or melted butter, and this in a lot of ways is the best one because it has a lot of fat in it that sustains energy over a long period of time. Okay? And usually when someone creates in this Saptamsa, they create the longest lasting dynasties because fat burns a lot more slowly than sugar does. Okay? Which most of these, or the bigger ones, are based on sugar. Okay? The ones coming up. And, so this really lasts a long time. There's an example, John Lennon has his Jupiter in this Saptamsa. And if you want to look it up again, I use the tropical zodiac. So that's what I'm using. And so, this is a really nice one to have. It's right in the middle of the sign, and whatever the person creates is usually lasts and is highly influential. Okay? The public is ready to embrace it. It's also ruled by Mercury. Mercury is a manifesting planet, like Jupiter, okay, according to Gemini. Mercury manifests things, and he does it because he rules the earth element, and the earth element, of course, is going to manifest on the physical earth plane. Mercury is a big manifester in his Buddha yoga, too, the Pancha Mahapurusha yoga of Mercury. These are the people who usually do the most on the planet Earth, do most concrete things. People see them, people hear them, they admire them. So that's how that works. Okay. So Ajya is a nice one to have. Now, the next one is Rasa. This is the Saptamsa. It's the fifth portion of an odd sign and the third portion of an even sign. Okay? Iksharaza rules sugarcane juice, or any juice that is sweet and invigorating, usually fruit juices, a juice with a lot of sugar. This one is ruled by Jupiter. This is a super creative portion or essence. It's probably the most creative one, but it's very fast. It's a burst. It's an explosion of creativity. When people have a lot of creative juices, when they have planets or significant house cusps in this essence or ruled by this deity, but it's very brief and fast and powerful, and then they need to kind of rest and relax. These are the people who might have a lot of children in a short period of time, rather than having children spaced out over a long period of time. If having a lot of children is their thing, right? Having spaced out children over a long period of time, that's more in the previous one that I was talking about, Ajya, okay? But this one is just a really strong burst of creativity. The things they create, they can create across the board, a lot of different types of things, but then they just kind of let go of it and need to rest and stew in their juices for a while until they get that really strong burst of energy that sugar tends to give. Okay? So, most hyper creative, but those things don't necessarily last as long as they do with some of these other Saptamsa deities. Okay? Then we have, this one's ruled by Jupiter. I covered that. Then we have Madhya. Okay, Madhya is honey. And Honey is also lots of good sugar, nourishing sugar, but honey also has a lot of other nourishing benefits besides the sugar. And honey is also very sticky. So people here are, or planets, I should say, planets and house cusps here create in a way that tends to last and that they tend to stick with for a very long time. Okay? People that have significant planets here like to stay in longer term relationships. They like to stick to something for a while and nourish it, but they're also very extremely creative. This is also a very creative one. This is the sixth portion or the sixth Saptamsa of a sign for an odd or masculine sign. And it is the second Saptamsa or portion of a feminine sign. So this is also a highly creative one that tends to make things that last and are influential. It's ruled by Venus, and Venus is a teacher. Jaimini says Venus is a teacher that teaches human abilities. Venus is concerned with improving upon human skills and abilities and improving ourselves. Venus was the guru of the diamonds or the demons. I like to say diamonds because demons is more, you get this idea of, somebody with a pitchfork and a tail. That's not what it means. He was the demon of the Asuras, or kind of like the giants in Nordic mythology or the Titans in Greek mythology. He believes in human abilities, and he had the power to bring people back to life, okay, in this Hindu myth. And so Venus has to do with psychotherapy, okay, going into our own psyche and trying to figure out ourselves, trying to get through some of the more negative and dark parts of our personality. That's Venus, okay? So, and Venus is devotion, too. Rules devotion. So the person is more devoted to their creations. They're not hyper creative where they have a smorgasbord of things they need to create or a lot of different people they want to be with. They like to stick with one thing, nourish it, create it, and put it out in the world and improve upon it, stick with it, as their legacy moves on. Okay? Then we have Suddhajala, or Shuddhajala. It's spelled Suddhajala. Okay? This one's ruled by Saturn. This one is water, pure water. Water refreshes us and vitalizes us, but it doesn't feed us. Water is something we need to survive, but it doesn't necessarily give us a lot of energy or a burst of energy or fat or any of those things. It just, we need it to survive. That's it. And Saturn is the planet of survival. Okay. Saturn is the planet of doing the bare minimum to survive. So, when people have planets in this one, ruled by Suddhajala, which happens to be, it's the seventh or the last Saptamsa or last portion of a masculine sign and the first portion of an even sign. So when you create here, you're creating to survive, basically. You're creating because you want to get by with something. You just want to get through something. You're creating to avoid hardships. Okay. And also, if the planet is in good dignity or the house cusp is doing well, then the person, usually those things last, but what they create lasts, but the person is detached from it. Okay, they're much more detached from it. Saturn rules detachment, healthy detachment. Not avoidance, not neglect, but healthy detachment. If the planets or house cusps are harmed, then the person either cannot let go of that thing. Okay. Once they create like children, they can't let go of their children. They're too attached to their children. They want to control their children. That indicates that, the planet or house cusp is here and there's, affliction to it. Okay. Or they're very attached to their creations. Once they sell it, once they write the book, they are just obsessed with how it's doing or what people think of it. They're always, they're always checking the reviews, that just as an example. Okay. So they can really have a hard time letting go of their creations, and they get very upset if, let's say, they write a book or they make a movie or whatever it is and the public does not like it. That can very much upset them when they have it here. All right. But usually, they are creating to get through life. Like there's an example I'll give you. This is one of my favorite directors, so I know this. Lars von Trier. He made a few movies. Some of my top 10 are like 3 of his movies. One is Melancholia, Dancer in the Dark. But anyway, so he has severe depression and anxiety. And he basically said he made the movie Melancholia to help him through his depression and anxiety. So that's kind of an example of how a person would create around this Sudajala deity or essence. Okay. So yeah, that's it. This is so interesting when you start to look at your D7 Varga and start to interpret what's going on there, right? And you can do it with other people too. It's just a really interesting Varga to analyze and even give readings about. So yeah, that's it for today. And thank you so much for watching. And please visit my website. I've got a lot more articles. I've been blogging a lot more. So if you want to read some of my essays, please visit my website, or if you're interested in readings. Okay. So thanks for watching. Bye.